Good afternoon, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream of this meeting. Welcome to this meeting of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee. My name is Councillor Jeff Harvey. I'm usually a vice chair of this committee. However, I'm going to be chairing this meeting today as our usual chair. Councillor Pippa Halings has sent her apologies. She's actually a delegate at COP in United Arab Emirates. I think we're very lucky to have a usual chair who's so involved in the issues we deal with at an international level. For the information of members of the public, our committee advises Cabinet on actions required to achieve the Council's targets on climate change and its environmental commitments. If I could ask those joining remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they are addressing the committee. And for those in the room, please ensure that your microphone is close to you when you speak and switch it off after you've finished speaking. As I said earlier, my name is Councillor Jeff Harvey and I'm a member of Balsham Ward. And my vice chair is Councillor Dr. Martin Khan. So I'm not sure whether the other councillors could just introduce themselves in sequence, starting with Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Peter Sanford, one of the members for Caxton and Papworth Ward.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Lisa Redrup. I'm one of the members for the Harston and Comberton Ward.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Ariel Khan. I'm a member for Harston and Comberton Ward as well.
Good afternoon, Peter Fane. I'm one of the members for Shelford Ward.
Thank you. And I think I omitted to allow you to introduce yourself. Councillor Khan.
I'm Martin Khan, Councillor Martin Khan. I'm a member for Histon and Impington Ward.
Yeah.
I think we've got Councillor Batchelor online as well, joining us.
Yes. Councillor Batchelor, would you like to introduce yourself, or perhaps I'll just,
Yeah. Hi, afternoon, everyone. Councillor Henry Batchelor. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services. So, yeah, not planning on actively taking part, but here if called upon.
Thank you. We have a number of officers with us today. Rebecca Weymouth-Wood, Orla Gibbons, we have Lawrence Dermary Hogan running the meeting, and I think Patrick Adams as well, taking notes. We also have Matthew Axton and Connor Empringham Green on my left. I think that's everybody who is online. Yes, unless there are anyone I haven't mentioned, I think we've now gone around the whole room. So, oh no, I missed you over there. Would you mind introducing yourselves?
Ellie Haynes, Development Officer in Climate and Environment.
Luke Waddington, Project Officer in the Climate and Environment team.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Before we proceed to the business of the agenda today, I'd like to note that the Council held its first local climate action conference last Tuesday at Cobham Village Hall. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there myself because I was at the Audit and Governance Committee, which clashed with that. But I did really wish that I hadn't had to be at Audit and Governance, because it sounded as though the conference was a huge success and would have, well, arguably would have been more interesting than Audit and Governance, but I can't say that because I think both have their merits. But I wonder, Orla, would you like to give us a sort of brief synopsis of the day and the events and the outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So the conference was chaired by Councillor Brian Milne and featured 5 guest speakers. We had Chris Parkin from Cambridgeshire County Council, who spoke on the county's work to develop an energy strategy that ensures communities benefit from the energy transition. Then Malcolm Bird of Steeple Morden Parish Council shared their journey to access funding and install a community electric vehicle charger using our grants, and about the charger's usage patterns and what that indicated about EV uptake in the area. Alison Giles of Girton Parish Council described the creation of their local nature recovery plan for the village. And Helen Dye spoke on the work of Natural Cambridgeshire and the process of them making a local nature recovery strategy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and some funding available for grassroots nature recovery projects. And then finally, John Cornell of Greater Cambridge Shared Planning explained the mechanics of and the opportunities presented by the new biodiversity net gain duty. So yeah, the conference was well attended. I think we had approximately 70 people there at a count. And yeah, we're particularly grateful for the sort of backing of the event by councillors. So thank you very much to everyone who was able to attend. And then we had 10 parish councils represented at the event, including Histing and Impington, Coton, Barrington, Swavesey, Gamlingay, Ickleton and Oakington and Westwick. And then we were also joined by representatives from a number of our district's climate action groups, including Cambridge Carbon Footprint, Cambridgeshire Climate Emergency and the Haslingfield and Harleton Eco Group. Other attendees also included SCDC officers, officers from Huntingdonshire District Council and the County Council, and there were just a lot of members of the public there who weren't necessarily affiliated with a group. Yeah, so overall early feedback is suggesting that the strengths of the event were in the quality of the speakers and the discussions that those speakers prompted. And participants are reporting that they were encouraged and inspired by volunteer-led grassroots projects sharing their successes and learnings. Besides some practical issues with lighting and sound, participants also suggested that in the future a breakout activity or some kind of workshop might help to harness the enthusiasm and the expertise that was in the room to stimulate further action, and officers, we sort of seconded this. We hope to build on the success of this year's event by holding another longer conference event next year, which will allow us to include a workshop or a kind of breakout activity, as well as a supplementary evening or weekend event to ensure that all those who wish to participate can, because obviously this was during a weekday in the morning. So we're also keen to broaden the demographic reach of the event and bring together a wider range of voices. Yeah, just like to extend a special thanks to Councillor Milne, who's not here, but thank you very much for him chairing the event and facilitating the Q&As, and also to Cottenham Parish Council, who helped out a lot in the run-up and on the day. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Orla. I must say, although I wasn't able to go to this particular event, I've attended other similar events, and I'm always sort of amazed, well, not amazed, but just really gratified the level of grassroots interest that we're so lucky to enjoy in South Cambs, and really feeling that support for everything we're doing. I think we'd join the other councillors, my vice chair and Pippa Haling's not here at the moment, just thank the officers for organising what seems to have been such a successful day. And, sorry, yes, Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Like you, I wasn't able to be there for similar reasons. I noticed that it was held to time with the COP28. I think that was a very useful report, but I wonder whether we could perhaps have something on the website to report or circulated to highlight some of the comments made by the speakers. I find that very helpful. I don't see anything on the website at the moment. We've got the announcement on the website, but not the outcome, so that would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still collating feedback responses coming in, so some quotes and yeah, a bit more from that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, once again, congratulations, a fantastic day it seems. Next item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any? I think we probably do. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Democratic Services have received 2 apologies today from Councillor Pippa Halings and Councillor Natalie Warren-Green. Councillor Fane has kindly stepped in as substitute today.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any of the business on the agenda today? Obviously, if an interest does become apparent later on in the meeting, you can always flag that at the time. So I don't think we have any declarations of interest. So minutes of the previous meetings is our next agenda item. Do we have the meetings, the minutes from the meeting on the 12th of October up for approval today? And if so, do any members wish to make any amendments to these minutes? I think we can take that as having approved the minutes by affirmation. Yeah. Committee therefore agrees to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October 2023 as a correct record. So agenda item 4 is the air quality update report. We have a number of recommendations laid out for us in the report, but before we discuss these, I'd like to invite Matthew to present the report to us.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I've produced a couple of slides just to make it a bit more user-friendly for you. So, bear with me 1 second, I will just actually bring that up. There we go. Excellent. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to give this air quality update. There's quite a few bits to update you on. We've not discussed air quality here for about a year and a half, so there's a fair bit. So I will try and go through it as quickly as I can. So just a quick reminder as to why we're here. So obviously we have statutory duties around air quality, often known as the Local Air Quality Management Regime, so LAQM. They're set out in the Environment Act 1995. And we produce a yearly report presenting the results of our monitoring. That's known as the Annual Status Report. I'm happy to confirm that DEFRA have approved the 2023 report, which is available on our website, and it's available as Appendix B to this report. And as part of that annual report, we have to compare our monitoring results to national objectives. All objectives were met in 2022, which is the reporting year for the 2023 report. And that means that we currently don't have any AQMAs, which are air quality management areas. They're special areas where objectives are potentially going to be failed. We did have one along the A14, which was revoked in, I believe it was January 2021. And there is now an expectation that local authorities without any AQMAs would have an air quality strategy, and there's a sort of a change of focus from DEFRA from simply meeting targets to sort of improvement of air quality. And why do we want to improve air quality? Well, it's a nice infogram here from UK HSA, a Health Security Agency. Sort of outlines a number of the conditions that are linked to high levels of air pollution, and as well as the conditions listed up there, the ones that we're probably more aware of, like asthma and lung conditions. There's emerging evidence of links with Alzheimer's and dementia, and there's been a number of reports recently linking air pollution to a number of different conditions, such as postnatal depression, antibiotic resistance. It was linked to a higher prevalence of COVID at the time of the pandemic as well. So yes, it's a wide range of conditions that it can potentially exacerbate or cause. And it's estimated that long-term exposure to air pollution in the UK has an annual effect equivalent to 28,000 to 36,000 deaths, which is pretty astounding. Incredible numbers. So it's really important that we take action. And also to note that the Committee for the Medical Effects on Air Pollution, they have now confirmed that there's no safe level of PM 2.5, so particulate matter, 2.5 microns in size, so there's no safe level. So anything we can do to reduce levels will help to reduce those conditions up on the board there. So what do we do? So we have a strategy in place already, and one element of that strategy is monitoring. So we monitor throughout South Cambs district. So we have a number of diffusion tubes. I've got a little diffusion tube here. So these are very small and simple devices, but they're really, really good for measuring nitrogen dioxide. And they're really good for understanding the long-term trends associated with traffic pollution. Nitrogen dioxide is mostly linked to pollution from vehicles, especially diesel vehicles. So we have about 35 of those, I think. Yeah, nod from Connor, thank you, Connor. So we have 3 continuous monitors. These are the very expensive monitors that are authorised by DEFRA, and they go onto the national websites that help to the national modelling. And we've currently got them in Impington, Harston and Northstowe. So one of the things to note in the report was we've moved a couple of our monitors, or we've installed new monitors, and we're decommissioning some of the older monitors. So we've decommissioned the ones in Orchard Park and Girton. We're refocusing on the areas of growth, which is why we've got one in Northstowe, and areas that haven't been monitored previously, so that's why we've got one in Harston. We're aware that the Orchard Park one was installed to monitor the improvement works to the A14, and there was a requirement for that to be in place for at least 3 years after those works had completed, and we understand that 3 years has now passed. And if there were any sort of ongoing concerns about the Orchard Park area, we will retain some diffusion tubes in that area, and we also have the continuous monitor in Impington, which is adjacent to the A14, sort of a couple of kilometres along the A14. So we still have quite a comprehensive understanding of that area. And then obviously we have our Zephyr sensors. So that's the one of the sensors on the photograph there on the presentation. So these monitor a number of pollutants, particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide, and a number of others such as ozone and nitrogen oxide. So these are really good because they give you instant data, but we can also move them quite quickly. We can just mount them on a lamppost like that. They run from the solar power, so they're really good. We've done a number of studies at schools to help raise the awareness of impacts of pollution around schools. Obviously, children are particularly vulnerable to to pollution as their lungs are still growing. So that's why we've done these studies. So a little bit more about the Zephyr school studies. So we've looked at 6 schools, Camborne, Harston, Histon, Milton, Northstowe and Swavesey. And at all locations, the measurements we got were well below the national air quality objectives, and at 4 of the 6 schools they were below the WHO guideline values, which we'll go on to discuss a little bit more later. For nitrogen dioxide, we also were able to determine that levels of nitrogen dioxide were generally higher during the term time than they were to the school holiday periods. As you would expect, they will be busier, more cars during the term time, and that was obviously linked to higher levels of nitrogen dioxide. That link wasn't as strong with the PM 2.5 particulate matter, as that tends to be driven by non-traffic sources, so burning, regional and domestic events, international events, sorry. So, yes, so traffic does contribute to PM2.5, but not as strongly as the nitrogen dioxide. However, we weren't able to conclusively say that levels were higher during the school drop-off and pick-up times. And I'm going to show you a graph next. So this is 24 hours of data from the Zephyr showing levels of nitrogen dioxide. And what you would expect to see is at pick-up and drop-off peaks of pollution. But unfortunately, because nitrogen dioxide is quite strongly influenced by UV, so light breaks down the NO2, so you don't necessarily get high levels of NO2 when you've got the high levels of traffic. So you can actually see when the sun's up between about 9:30 and 5 on that first day, and about 8 and 7 or 6 on the second day, there's not really any levels of nitrogen dioxide. So it's very difficult to draw sort of very short-term conclusions. So if I'm moving on to the next thing, so we have been asked to look at using public space protection orders to try and prevent vehicle idling outside of schools. So the first thing to note is because of what I've just discussed, it's very difficult evidencing directly the vehicle idling to any higher levels of pollution, although we do know that the idling cars will be producing pollution. It's very difficult to actually evidence that with the monitoring and with the equipment. Public space protection orders can be quite administratively difficult to set up. And there are also there are existing powers under the Road Traffic Vehicle Emissions Fixed Penalty England Regulations 2002, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. So you can actually use those without undertaking any sort of authorisations. You just have to have an authorised officer, and they're able to issue fixed penalty notices of £20 to idling vehicles. However, other authorities have found that enforcement of any kind is quite difficult. And the best practice from around the UK appears to be positive engagement with the communities, and education is more effective than the sort of stick approach of fines. There's a few examples there of catch lines and posters from other authorities that undertake promotional positive engagement work. And so one of the I think recommendations is that we don't actively undertake enforcement, but that we put together a program for positive engagement, starting with schools and other local organisations, and I think we will try and bring you back a sort of more comprehensive plan on that in the spring. So that's one of your recommendations, that you endorse that. And then moving on to the other sort of main topic that we have got to cover today. So a greater Cambridge air quality strategy. So yes, so a greater Cambridge air quality strategy between South Cambs and Cambridge City. So it would have the bonus of aligning with the emerging local plan and the joint Greater Cambridge Planning Service, and it would make it much easier to enforce anything around planning. It also allows for better and smooth partnership working on cross-boundary infrastructure projects. So many of the infrastructure projects are cross-boundary, all of the busways, the parks and rides, the Camborne to Cambridge project that's being worked on at the moment. So there's a lot of cross-boundary on the infrastructure projects, and if we're both aligned on our air quality strategy, it will help on the support for those projects. It also helps streamlining with other key stakeholders, such as the County Council, the Public Health Departments, the Greater Cambridge Partnership and the Combined Authority. And it also has the potential for allowing for wider and more impactful awareness-raising campaigns. So as I believe we note in the report, Cambridge City Council have already endorsed a working towards a joint air quality strategy. Any strategy would be brought before this committee before being formally adopted. And we hope to work towards that quite quickly and bring that back to you again in the spring. As I mentioned earlier, we already do have a strategy, and we're not planning on reinventing the wheel. It's very much an improvement and a continuation of the existing strategy. So you'll see at the moment our existing strategy has 3 focused actions, and the draft strategy that we're trying to work up with Cambridge City at the moment has 4 key priorities. So as you can see, 3 of them align quite well with the existing actions, so policies, community engagement, monitoring. And so the only newer key priority is for looking at infrastructure more detailed. And so, yes, so one of the recommendations is for us to go ahead with moving ahead with working on that joint air quality strategy. And the other recommendation is that we work towards adopting World Health Organization air quality guidelines as an aspiration to work towards. So, as mentioned earlier, we are already achieving all of the UK limits. There is an annual mean for PM2.5 of 10 micrograms, but that's only going to come in by 2040. The World Health Organization are recommending a value of 5, so that's half of what the national government are looking to achieve in another 17 years' time. We know that 5 micrograms per metre cubed for particulate matter is going to be a very difficult target, but we want to be ambitious, we want to improve health, and we don't want to have a slide in the air quality. We don't want it to get worse. We all know that there's obviously significant growth in the area, and if we don't have a target to work towards, if we haven't got anything aligned with the local plan, then we've got nothing to get the developers to do the right things in terms of air quality, and obviously we don't want air quality to start sliding and getting worse rather than improving as it should do. So we want to be ambitious. The air quality strategy may have some interim targets because we recognise that some of the targets might be difficult to achieve in the 5-year period that this air quality strategy is aimed for. But yeah, we want to be ambitious, I think is the main point there. And that is the sort of the last recommendation, I believe, is that you endorse the use of the World Health Organization guidelines. And I believe that's it, and I will leave it there, and open up for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Matthew. Well, not only for that informative presentation, but also the depth and breadth of the report that we've had in the agenda papers, which there's so much data and so much of interest in there. And thank you also, I believe you're fairly recent to South Counts, and glad to see you've hit the ground running with a fantastic report. So thank you very much. Members, do we have, obviously we've already got one, questions of clarification for Matthew and his colleagues?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for the presentation. When you talk about continuous monitoring, what does that mean in practice? I'm sure there's not some poor soul sitting staring at a screen 24 hours a day. How often is the data examined?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sanford. Good question. So the data is collected continuously. So the DEFRA continuous monitors that we have in 3 locations, they take a reading every hour, and that is reported back to us. We can look it up online at any time. So if we have a particular concern about something, or we've noticed a particular event that we might think we might have a particular interest in, we can go and look at that data at any time. And then, yeah, we get yearly reports so that we can collate it and look at it as an annual objective, annual mean objective. But yes, we're not sitting there staring at it all the time. But yeah, it's being collected on an hourly basis. The Zephyr sensors, they are collecting data. I believe it's every 15 seconds they take a tiny sample, and then that can be averaged. We can look at that data as an every 15 second, or we can average it out to be looking at it on a 15-minute interval or an hourly interval. I tend to look at it an hourly interval so that it lines up with the continuous monitors. The only real drawback of the Zephyr monitors is that they're not DEFRA approved, and so that we can't use them for our annual reporting. However, I think I included a graph in the report which shows that actually the Zephyr data is very closely aligned to what we're getting from the other continuous monitors that are DEFRA approved, and so we do have high confidence that they are telling us accurate information. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yes, Councillor Fane.
Actually, my question, Chair, related to that graph, which I think is the one at the end of Appendix A, seems to show one or two remarkably high levels, particularly at Harston. But what I'm not quite clear about is it shows that the key doesn't distinguish between the continuous monitors and the Zephyr sensors. So this is presumably for one or the other. I couldn't see any basis of comparison within that. You're saying that the monitors are producing similar results, allowing for a different time frame, are they?
Yeah, apologies if the graph's not clear. So, so this is a graph showing the levels of particulate matter 2.5 or PM 2.5 at all of the sites. So it's the same scale. So it's the same time frame for all of them. So PM 2.5 is typically dominated by sort of regional events. So you'd expect all of the monitors to be picking the similar levels up at the same time, unless there's something particularly local, like what appears to have happened at Harston on the first half of that graph. where you get the particularly high levels. That may have been a local bonfire or something like that, possibly has caused a temporary spike at Harston, which hasn't been picked up at the others. But yeah, they're all measuring the same thing at the same time in different locations, and they're all getting similar data. So hopefully it's clarified it, maybe not.
Thank you, but it wasn't clear to me whether this is showing data from the continuous monitors or from Zephyr. Clearly, the same line can't be showing for both. Which is this?
The key shows, so the blue, the orange and the grey lines are for the 3 continuous monitors that we operate, so Harston, Impington and Northstowe. The yellow line is the Zephyr monitor, and then there's a light blue line which is a background monitor in Wicken Fen, which I appreciate isn't just in East Cambs, but that's operated by DEFRA. That's a sort of a background control monitor, as it were.
Okay, so there's no comparison between the continuous monitoring and the Zephyr at the same site because they're being used on different sites. The Zephyr is only being used.
Yes, it's different sites. Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Dr. Lisa Reckup, you had a question.
Thank you. I was looking at the air quality england.co.uk website for the continuous monitors at Harston, Impington and I forget, sorry, at this moment, but there doesn't seem to be much data available for Harston. There's 3 data points, but I couldn't see any for the others. I just wondered if that's because it takes time to get that data in or when that data might become visible. Thank you.
I'm going to let Connor answer that one.
So since we've had those new monitors, we use a third-party company to collate the data, and they have not put the data on as of yet. We have been in contact, I think, only last week to query that, and we're waiting for them to get back to us and hopefully backdate that data because it is all stored on their own servers as far as I'm aware.
Thank you.
Councillor Dr. Martin Kahn.
Sorry, I was reading recently about PM 2.5 in relation to vehicles, and the comment was made that tyre wear produces about 2,000 times as much pollution as the actual emissions do from the exhaust. So that clearly is an important contribution towards it. It's difficult to measure because it includes also a lot of ultrafine, doesn't it, as I understand it. I just wondered whether something should be mentioned about this and whether precautions and how one might thinking about how one might tackle this, measuring it because it's difficult to measure in future. I'd also like to know which type of traffic is most likely to be. Is it fast, heavy goods traffic? Is it small vehicles? Which is the biggest risk? Therefore, where's the biggest input? And how well it's another aspect that seems to be important is that the 2.5 and ultrafines tend not to show a large change away from a road. I know there's not a big decline like there is for the other pollutants. I presume that's because they're very fine, they're carried a long way right through the atmosphere. So we're getting pollution from outside our area. What sort of things can we do about that? How can we feed into the national strategy? Because presumably then it matters really what we do over the whole country for that. And just like some comments on that, and can that at least be mentioned as a challenge for the future in the strategy? I understand that the government is talking about going to World Health Organization limits on this in 2025, but I'm not sure whether that's something you've heard or what the latest is on that.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Yeah, some really good questions there. So PM 2.5 from non-exhaust emissions. There was a report by the Air Quality Expert Group in 2019, and so about 60% of PM 2.5 at that time was they estimated from non-exhaust emissions, so that's brakes and tyre wear, and the remaining 40% obviously from the exhaust. That will be changing as more and more people adopt electric vehicles, so there will be the proportion coming from exhaust will be obviously decreasing, which means obviously the tyre wear will be increasing, so that is becoming more and more of a important topic to look at. So yeah, measuring it locally is almost impossible to split out where the different sources of PM 2.5 come from. It's yeah, something I'm really quite interested in, but yeah, as yet there's very little way of saying how much of what we're measuring is coming from from domestic burning, how much of it is coming from is secondary PM from agriculture, which is converted from ammonia, how much of it is from tyre and brakes, how much of it is from exhaust. So it's difficult, really difficult to yeah, it's really difficult to pick out what's coming from where. Obviously, there are occasions when you can look at the data and you can see a peak. So, for example, we could see a peak on bonfire night, and that we can assume quite confidently has come from the activities that happen on bonfire night. So there are times when you can see trends in the data and you can draw some conclusions, but yeah, it's not really possible to measure the sources locally, and so we have to rely on the research that others have done really in that regard. Sorry, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I read that, and perhaps you could tell me comment on that, that electric cars tend to produce more tyre wear because they're heavier than petrol or diesel cars, and therefore going to electric cars, while it might reduce exhaust emissions, may increase tyre emissions. Is that likely to be a problem? How much difference will that make?
Again, that's a really good question, and something I hear quite a lot, to be honest. It's a question that yeah, comes up quite often. There is a really good article by the RAC which looks at this in quite good detail, and I can circulate that after the meeting if people are interested. But to summarise that, so obviously the 40% that's coming from exhaust is immediately taken away. In terms of the non-exhaust emissions, of the braking tends to be much more done by regenerative braking, so they're using the motor to slow the vehicle down rather than using the brakes, so the particulate emissions from the brakes tend to be much lower. There were some reports that the tyre wear would be incredibly more, but in practice, people running large fleets of electric vehicles haven't found a great deal of difference. Certainly myself, I drive an electric vehicle and have the front tyres are a little bit worn, but the rear tyres are pretty much as new after about 25,000 miles. So I don't think, I know I'm only a sample of one, but but yeah, that seems to be borne out by the information in the RAC report. So it possibly makes a slight increase on the tyre, but I think that's very much offset by the reduction in brake and the reduction in the exhausts. The other questions that you mentioned, which vehicles, so obviously larger vehicles, will produce more emissions. So in the same way as large buses and lorries have contributed more to nitrogen dioxide, they are likely as well to contribute more to PM pollution. And in terms of the cross-boundary particulates, yes, that's a really difficult one, and I think it's a challenge that's going to cause a lot of work over the next few years. I think things like the joint strategy, for example, and cross-boundary working is going to help. Bigger projects to help reduce traffic. But yeah, every local authority just has to do their bit in their own area, I think, is the approach. And, you know, we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our neighbouring authorities, and hopefully they're doing the same for us in return. So yeah, it is, I think it's something that I recognise, and definitely DEFRA recognise that there's a wider issues there. But yeah.
On that, commenting on that, the final challenge of 5 microgram, what it is per, I can't remember the
2.5.
0.5.
Okay.
Yeah, for the particles. It seems a very high challenge. As I remember looking at a map, this is the sort of challenge that's difficult to achieve even in the Arctic. How likely do you think it is that we can actually get near that?
Yes, so I think the World Health Organization at the moment, I think they estimate that I think 99% of the world's population exceed their World Health Organization target for the 2.5, PM 2.5. So yes, we do recognise that it's a very ambitious and difficult target, and I think that's why we talked about having some interim targets, which I think I mentioned in presentation. So yes, I think interim targets that are achievable, and then hopefully move on from there. I think yeah, it's not something that we're going to achieve overnight, definitely.
Thank you. I just have one question myself from the slides, and we were talking about PM 2.5 being more of a sort of background and regional effect compared with nitrogen dioxide, and I wondered whether you'd agree that it seemed to me that nitrogen dioxide is probably a sort of relatively short-lived effect on the body, because it probably quite quickly metabolized, just guessing, whereas I think the danger with the PM 2.5 is it kind of crosses a barrier into the bloodstream, and then, you know, once it's in, it's kind of there for a long time. So, and therefore, presumably it has a sort of cumulative health impact that nitrogen dioxide doesn't. So if you sort of take the cumulative sort of area under the curve, if you like, and compare that with the nitrogen dioxide, does that mean that PM 2.5 in relation to the targets we're aiming for, is that actually a much more serious concern than the nitrogen dioxide, or are they sort of on a par?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harvey. Really interesting question. So yes, you're absolutely right. So the ultrafine particles, they will cross over into the bloodstream when you're in your lungs, when you're breathing, and then I think the reason they're linked to things like Alzheimer's and dementia is because those ultrafine particles then get potentially into your brain, and they, yes, you're right, once they're in there, they're very difficult to then get out, so there is a cumulative effect. So So the question was, is that more of an important
Yeah,
target?
so if we could do something about only one of those two, would it be PM 2.5 is the most important one to address? Perhaps we're just going beyond what we as mere observers, and we need some sort of research person to tell us the answer to that.
I would like to say that I think that we'd like to tackle them all. I think will be my diplomatic answer.
That's a very good answer, thank you. Okay, so can I just, I know Matthew, you've covered them, so I'll just run through the recommendations to the committee, and then I think we've got a further opportunity to discuss the report and the recommendations. So we've got 4 recommendations in front of us today. So I haven't got the report open, so I don't know which page that's on, but recommendation A, review and comment upon the updates on the air quality strategy, which I think we're going to do anyway. Note the conclusions of the use of public space protection orders and recommend to the lead cabinet member to progress a positive engagement campaign rather than a sort of more enforcement-based approach on the vehicle idling issue. And C, recommend to the lead cabinet member to progress an early revision of the South Cambridgeshire District Council Air Quality Strategy as a joint Greater Cambridge Air Quality Strategy with Cambridge City Council, with the finalised strategy coming before the committee in spring 2024. And then finally, recommendation D, to recommend to the lead cabinet member to adopt the WHO World Health Organization air quality guidelines as the air quality standard to work towards across Greater Cambridge as our new target. So can I reopen the floor then to comments on those recommendations? Are we, do you think we're well, let's have a discussion first, but then I'll ask you after the discussion whether we're happy to agree to those recommendations. Do we have any other further inputs? Councillor Sanford, I think you just got in there first.
Thank you, Chair. A fairly random thought around point B. We're getting civil parking enforcement in the next couple of days, I believe. And some of that, I assume, will be around schools to make sure that people are parking legally to drop off and pick up times. Could we give what used to be called traffic wardens, I think they're called civil parking agents now, leaflets just to hand out, particularly to drivers who are sitting there with their engines idling unnecessary, just to explain, why that's a bad thing? I'm not sure who could take that forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Councillor Sanford. That seems like an eminently sensible possible avenue. And do any of the officers, perhaps our officers have already got that one in hand, but is anyone going to comment on that as an idea or proposal?
Yes, so just quickly to say, we have, in my previous authority, we have done similar to that. So it's something that I can look into. I must admit, being quite new, I'm not sure of the appropriate people to speak to, but I can take that away and look at that. Yeah.
So can we sort of therefore note that as a possible approach to investigate as a committee, if everyone's happy with that? I think actually it was Councillor Dr. Lisa Redrup was next. Is it okay?
Yes, fine. I just wanted to comment on what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, if you've
okay,
got
I just wanted to comment on what I was saying, that as I understand it, I don't think the civil parking officers can actually enforce the idling, because that's a road thing rather than, it's a highway thing rather than the actual parking. It doesn't mean that they can't be advising.
Specifically didn't say enforce it, just handing out informational leaflets should be doable.
Yeah, very good. Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to state my thoughts on recommendation D about the World Health air quality guidelines. And I just think, although it sounds incredibly difficult, I think it is really important, and you know, it is about our health, our children's health, etc. So I think being ambitious is really important. I'm pleased to see this being put to us today. It is something that I've asked about before from the air quality team, so I'm really pleased to see it today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I sort of certainly agree with that. That we always need a stretch target, don't we? Even if it's a tricky one. And of course, we have got the World Health Organization behind this, and I'm sure they have arrived at that figure as a kind of somewhere between a stretch and something that would be achievable. And I suppose, given that this is a sort of background effect, as global, hopefully global burning of particularly coal, I imagine, diminishes, there'll be less of it swirling around the globe, and maybe that makes things easier. So yes, I think we absolutely, I mean, yeah, if the committee will agree later on, I would agree with that. Do you have any other inputs from the committee? I have one myself, but or maybe I'll go ahead with my own. I just a similar theme to the changing composition of vehicle emissions as we go to EVs. I wondered, you know, given the importance of PM2.5, and as we see more electrification of the vehicle and transport fleet, whether these other sources will become the sort of dominant problem, if you like. And I do still worry about, and I know I've raised this in a previous committee, the impact of, particularly in oil-burning villages, the impact of oil-burning boilers. I worry about the cost of living crisis, because I suspect that people, no evidence for this, but just human nature, probably having their boilers serviced less often, and I know that unless you regularly replace the atomizing jet, you know, your performance, your boiler will decrease. I also worry about the number of oil-burning range cookers that we have. I did challenge the market leader to produce their energy efficiency figures, and they said, well, we don't actually know how efficient our range cookers are, because they're not classified as a heating appliance, they're classified as a cooking appliance, and therefore we're not required to know what it is. But I've done my own research on this, and I found when I measured the range cooker, thermal efficiency was 40%, which is quite shocking compared with a modern condensing boiler, which would normally be 90%, but also the sort of combustion technology is Victorian, you know. So I can imagine there is, you know, a problem there that will, perhaps while it's tolerable at the moment, as we gradually reduce the road traffic emissions, it will become something of interest. And I did wonder, you know, with all this wonderful data in the report we've had, whether there would be a way in future sort of, or maybe it's already in there, comparing oil-burning villages with gas-burning villages to see if we can actually see if that oil burning, domestic oil burning, is actually contributing to the background level of PM2.5. I was also wondering another approach to try and sort of isolate that as a factor might be to work proactively and in advance with the county highways people. And when we know there's going to be you know, a lengthy road closure for whatever reason, whether there's an opportunity there to sort of establish a baseline and then take some more measurements without traffic, and, you know, see if we can actually get any useful information out of that. just really a few thoughts. So if nobody else has any further questions or inputs, sorry, yes.
Just one comment to, just an observation that you didn't find much impact of, of people dropping kids to school in terms of pollution, in particularly with the PM 2.5. And much of what we've been saying, that's not totally surprising. If the main source of pollution is from brakes and tyres, rather than from emissions from the exhaust pipe, we would expect that not to make a major difference on 2.5. It might make a big difference on the nitrogen, but you'd expect it not to be big on the other. That's more dispersed where the vehicles are travelling faster and accelerating more rapidly. So,
yes, but I think, if I may, Councillor Khan, I think what Matthew was saying earlier on was that actually as an overall picture, the level of PM 2.5 is mainly from non-traffic sources,
exactly.
and therefore, as the years go by, it becomes more important to sort of focus in on the non-traffic sources and see if we can see in a bit more detail what the picture is there. Because I'm sure it can't all be sort of blowing to us from, I mean, we've kind of really offshored our heavy industry, so probably a lot of that is coming from elsewhere, but I'm sure we are responsible for at least some of it, so it would be interesting to know. Okay, so going back to our recommendations, can we are there any particular recommendations any member would object to endorsing here? I can't see there really would be. They all look, to me, very, very sensible. So can we take that by affirmation then? Thank you very much. So I think that item is now concluded. And item 5 on our agenda is an oral update on the greening of South Cam, the greening of South Cambs Hall project, and Rebecca is going to give us an update on that. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm just giving this update on behalf of the project team. Specifically, this has been provided by Sean Misson, who's on the project team. So, and he apologised for missing today's meeting, but has asked me to do the update. So, in order to enhance the management of the project currently, they've now taken on board a technical project manager alongside an employer's agent and clerk of works, and they will be overseeing the completion of the project. The systems, procedures and reporting have been introduced to ensure that problems are being reported and any rectification plans are being put in place to address those issues. So there's a bit more oversight there. The construction phase plan is currently being revised and detailed to monitor the remaining works closely. And mechanical and electrical works have been checked with the client team to update that particular aspect of the construction phase plan. In the most recent quarter, they have comprehensively tested all the electric vehicle chargers and fixed issues that have been identified and replaced any faulty units. They continue to track their performance and ensure that they are working properly, and replacements were undertaken at the cost of the contractor. A design rectification by the contractor has been proposed to enable the chiller and the solar carports to operate concurrently, and further work has been undertaken to the design before approval can be granted for that. And again, that will be undertaken at the contractor's cost. The programme of works comprises a number of separate works, including the solar carport, the car park, the electric vehicle chargers, lighting, CCTV, the building management system, fire alarms, and the heating system itself, which is the ground source heat pump. Yep. So the focus of the team's current attention for this period is on the heating system itself, with it being the time of year, to ensure that that is performing correctly and to optimum performance. So that's what I have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Peter Fane, sorry.
Thank you. Very helpful to have that update. So I'm assuming the EV chargers are now all working effectively. But if I may, a question also, because I see it important that we demonstrate the benefits of this, what displays are we planning, for instance, of the performance of the solar panels, so that visitors, for instance, to this hall can see what the benefits might be?
Thank you.
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to myself, but I will ask Sean. That is a good question, and you know, personally, as an EV car user, I come here and I know, well, I've seen people use them. I haven't had to use them myself yet, but I know that they are working. But yeah, the displays could be clearer.
I have to say, Councillor Redrup and I did have cause to thank you all for the provision of the EV chargers, because we arrived here with 0 miles to the Audit and Governance Committee was it earlier in the week? So we would have been stranded otherwise. So it did work very well. I don't know, are there any items of other business that we can... I did have one item. I noticed that today, and this relates to discussions we've had previously in the Climate Environment Advisory Committee over, you know, heritage assets and how far we can go in terms of upgrading their energy performance and the sort of planning balance between you know, harm to heritage assets and public benefits. And I just noted that Heritage England published new guidance on that, which today, in fact, which does sort of, you know, certainly they've shifted their dial very slightly, I would say, in favour of giving due recognition to the importance of addressing climate change. So I think we've sort of penciled in a revisitation at some point in our programme for that, but I just thought that was an interesting thing as it was published today to mention. So I don't think we have any other items. So the next meeting will be on Tuesday the 13th of February. But actually I see from my notes here that there's also an invitation for other members to contribute sort of items which might, I think I've just mentioned one, but I know that's already in the sort of forward programme. Are there any other items that we might look to put under our microscope, if you like? Peter Fane.
Chair, I don't know whether this may be a matter for other committees, but it's not one that's normally covered by the Planning Committee, for instance, is the introduction of biodiversity net gain and the impact of that in terms of meeting our biodiversity objectives. I think it might be worth this committee looking at that.
Okay. I think we could.
Can I say something on that?
Yes, of course, please do.
So on that point, Councillor Fane, so we are still continuing with our series of workshops for SEAC, and we've only had one so far, I appreciate, so I'm calling it a series, but it will be a series. And indeed, the next one, which is planned on biodiversity.
Good.
So that is still our case, and Eleanor is actually working on the current timetable for those workshops, so you will know about that in due course.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, so with that, I think we can draw this committee to a close. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Thank you.